And now you have a same situation where you have a Bush who's the Hoover, who's helping to turn this downturn into a depression, and now you have Barack Obama coming in, promising more government, more of the stuff that Roosevelt did, and they could turn this into another Great Depression. The difference is the economy is in much worse shape going into this downturn than it was in the 1930s, and without a gold standard, without the discipline of gold, we have a central bank that could create massive inflation, and so as I said, we're going to get an inflationary depression, which is much worse than the 1930s, because at least during the 1930s, consumer prices fell, and that made it easier on people who were unemployed or who lost money.
Right,
because
nickel went a long way in the Great Depression,
yeah,
as my grandfather would always say. Yeah.
But what's going to happen now is during this depression, prices are going to be spiraling out of control.
Interesting. So on that happy note, we'll leave it there. We'll talk about what it means for investors. Peter, thanks very much.
Sure.
So you got to keep in mind what Peter Schiff is saying, though. He's coming from the same perspective as a lot of these pundits who they're throwing up their hands saying, like, why are they doing this? There's a bigger plan at work. They you know, this is all by design.
Mm-hmm. There's a collapse of the U.S. dollar coming. Whether you paid attention or not, the dollar is at an all-time low against the yen. The euro is at an all-time low against the yen. The British pound is at an all-time low against the yen. Now, I could talk to you about why I know for sure this is going to cause Japanese car prices to go up. I could give you an entire economic explanation. Maybe I will do that someday if you guys write me a note and say, can you please explain exchange rates, currency controls, and I'll go ahead and I'll give you the economics of the whole thing. But I won't bore you with the fact that what is going on with the currency exchanges versus the yen is going to force all Japanese prices up, which is going to cause, let's say, Toyota and Nissan to raise their car prices, which is going to give a lot of incentive for General Motors, Ford, Chrysler to raise their prices, which means car prices are going to go way up. And that is just going to be part and parcel of the fact that the unions are going to be on strike in our country, forcing wages up at union levels, just like their counterparts in Europe, which, by the way, I don't think you've been told, because if you've only been watching the mainstream news, you have not seen about the industrial riots going on. You haven't heard about the total financial collapse of Iceland. Iceland's government's gone. Gone. They rioted in the streets in Iceland, in Reykjavik. The government left. The krono, their currency, is gone. They've been replaced with the euro. You've got the European Central Bank now funding a little bit of Iceland, trying to get it back, and they're going to put them within the Eurozone now. So you have a complete collapse of a country, a total bankruptcy in Iceland. Some people say, oh, it's a tiny country. Who cares? The fact is, folks, it was considered one of the fastest growing countries in the world just a few short years ago, and now it's totally collapsed. It's gone. Iceland's government is gone. And all the way across, and I've got the articles
But
here.
it's not
Huge.
it's not directly affecting you.
Right.
You're starting to scramble a little bit because you think your job may in jeopardy.
But here it is. Just some stories for you to ponder. 14.4% unemployment rate in Spain and increasing. Major unrest because prices are going up and the people are losing their jobs. And the economy is sinking in Spain. The whole Eurozone is sinking. They are in Latvia. They are having riots. A Latvian businessman is complaining about how his business is losing money, and their government's coming and taxing them more, and he's laying people off. He basically attributes this what happened in the Soviet era, total collapse in Latvia. Greece is having a problem. So now you've got Lithuania, you've got Latvia, you've got Eastern Europe, who is delicate countries, collapsing now. Now you've got Western Europe collapsing. Greece, France, Spain, Portugal. You have protests going in all over the world. But you don't see it on mainstream news, probably because they're trying to keep you from thinking that it could happen here. And I'm thinking it's going to happen here. The unions are going to start getting crazy. They're going to start rioting. And there's going to be some serious domestic protests, particularly if the unemployment rates continue to rise. Now, if you believe it's at 8%, you're crazy. 8% is the official number. Like everything else I've told you, the official number is only a lie. So you need to look at that.
And while all of that's going on, here we are in the United States. Good old USA, where, we've been kind of conditioned that none of that bad stuff's going to happen to us.
The cone of silence. You remember Maxwell Smart?
Yeah, well, maybe he was referring to this. We're in a bubble here. We don't get the news. We don't get what's going on. We're oblivious and we're thoughtless.
Just more lies, more misinformation, more redirection. But just to fill up with a couple more things about stories I want you to pay attention to. We've talked about RFID chips in here, all the kinds of stories we talked about. Just real quick to fill up stories. RFID chips. A couple of years ago we said they're a bad idea, even though they said that RFID chips can never be hacked, that you have to be too close. And we showed you stories that RFID chips could in fact be stolen, and that some people had fears back in 2006. There was a couple of articles written saying that RFID chips could be hacked by people walking by with RFID readers.